expect you all to come back here after what seemed like a month. Just playing this. I'll go ahead and put it down. Anyways, what are we reviewing again? Oh, right, of course. I forgot. You know, this is why I never really keep up with schedules.
Banjo Tooie. Everybody loves the game. One of the true examples of a sequel surpassing its predecessor. It takes time and dedication to perfect a near-flawless game like the original Banjo Kazooie. But now looking at it, Banjo Tooie is the full package. Not only does it carry over from the first game in abilities and mechanics, but adds a lot of new things into the mix, as well as improving some of the first game's minor annoyances. I never played the sequel at all in my childhood, until my friend gave me his N64 copy for a couple days back in our sophomore year. I actually remember it being extremely difficult when I played it for the first time. I think it might be foreshadowing for future things to come. Well, let's see what Greg Mills and the team of Rare has given us on Puzzle Like Platter. Development started after the first Banjo-Kazooie in 1998. It was originally going to be put on the Nintendo 64 disk drive. Anyone remember that? No? It's understandable if you don't, because it was discontinued in Japan due to it being a commercial flop. Thus, no American version of the N64 DD was made, so development shifted to the base N64. Part of designing the sequel would include features that the first game was originally going to implement, those being the multiplayer and cut worlds that would eventually make their way to the sequel, as well as including a new type of mode called Bottle's Revenge. In it, Bottles, having enough with being disrespected, decides to hinder Banjo's quest. However, the feature, even when working very well according to Rare at the time, it was cut but was later included in the counter-operative mode in Perfect Dark. The story follows up after the first game. 2 years has passed since Gruntillo fell at the hands of the mighty Gingernator and Banjo and Kazooie, and now resides in a crater after her fall. Klungo does his best to free his mistress, but he cannot muster any sort of strength to get her out. Meanwhile, Banjo, Kazooie, Mumbo Jumbo, and Bottles are in the middle of a poker game gambling. Because of Mumbo's poker face, Kazooie tricks everyone into thinking Grunty came back, only to steal Mumbo's winnings. Only to then realize later on, earthquake happens to appear in Spiral Mountain, caused by a mysterious drill dozer, and out came two more witches. Turns out they're the sisters of Gruntilda, Blobella, the chubby one, and Mingella, the skinny one, with the combined powers of a spell that literally says, Destroy Boulder. Grunty is free, only to realize she's lost weight and lost her skin, and must now concoct a plan to get her back to normal. Banjo and the gang insist Mumbo to go out and take a look, only to notice Grunty really is alive, and Mumbo is spotted by the boneheaded witch. In a panic, Mumbo must tell everyone to run away after witnessing firsthand how Grunty got a failure in target practice. Bottles, thinking it's a prank, even though the ground was shaking when guys were stealing each other's winnings, stays behind, gets blasted, and dies. Now this really has gone dark by a witching Nile. Now knowing what's against them, Banjo, Kazooie, and Mumbo must try and stop Grunty and get revenge for their nearsighted fallen mole friend. Klungo tries to intervene to do his path, but he is thwarted. Banjo then encounters King Jingling, ruler of the Jinjo village, which has been decimated into a panic, as all the Jinjos ran away from the homes, and even the Grey Jinjo family died to the witches' Hag 1. As an incentive to bring his villagers back in time for the kickball tournament, Jingling gives Banjo his first Jiggy, only this time they don't have eyeballs. Unfortunately, as soon as Banjo leaves the palace, King Jingling is then hit by the witches, not before the sisters were complaining about Grunty's rhyming, utilizing the newly built laser machine known as the Big Ol' Blaster, or Bob for short, thus turning him into a zombie and killing poor Toots. After using the tunnel, they go to Jiggy Wiggy, who is the almighty powerful Jiggy expert, who kinda stinks at doing puzzles himself, cause Banjo had to do his puzzles for him. With the puzzles completed, Jiggy Wiggy opens up the 9, technically 8, worlds, and thus Banjo-Kazooie and Mumbo begin their revenge-seeking, fourth-wall-breaking, backtrack-filled quest on the Isle of Hags and thwart the witches from bobbing the world. After meeting with some interesting characters, what do you mean Vance can't have burgers, you Vancist? Collecting jiggies and being rhymed to by a somewhat clumsy drill sergeant, thwarting Klungo again, we head to Cauldron Keep, where Grunty, instead of trying to go through with her plan of getting all of the life essence from all the inhabitants on the Isle so she can get a new body, she builds a sequel to her Furnace Fun quiz show and calls it the Tower of Tragedy. But first, Klungo. He needs to reevaluate his career choices. Like before, quizzing you on the journey you were on for about 9 hours, and also allowing her to kill her own sisters after winning the game. Grunty is thwarted, but the three of them fathom the idea on what to do next. Why not just go after Grunty? Banjo and Kazooie suggest Grunty should run up towards the top of the tower and prepare for a final battle. Grunty agrees and runs away. Kazooie, use recover! It's super effective. Afterwards, thinking the game ended there, the two take in the fact they told Grunty themselves to go run away. Yeah, you kinda did this yourselves, guys. For, just because, they head towards the top only to see that Grunty is inside the Hag 1 and proceeds to attack them with mortars, the drill itself, the spell that killed Gambling Mole, and quizzes! Yeah, seems to be the normal shtick. Grunty accidentally dropped the spell inside and is blown to smithereens. Banjo and Kazooie proceed to celebrate with a party after defeating the witch. But unfortunately, the party was already over since they were battling Grunty. Wanting to keep the show rolling, they suggest kicking Grunty's head around like a hacky sack. Anybody remember those? Never mind. Grunty swore that she'll get revenge on the Baron Bird in Banjo 3, and thus the game ends. Yeah, I wish there was a Banjo 3. So that's Banjo Tooie. Honestly, it's what a story in a sequel is. Continuing the plot with familiar characters while introducing new ones. The villain is the same, but now has a more mischievous plot, and along the way, the fourth wall was indeed being bludgeoned by a random bird-toting weapon of mass destruction. As they constantly say something referring to the game's quest, how certain jiggies are so hard to get, knowing when someone strings a huge amount of tasks for the two to do. It's honestly one of my favorite parts, and not to mention one of the best highlights of this game. However, the theme of the game is rather dark for an E for everyone. The synopsis centers around death as a major plot, with bottles and life being sucked away, i.e. King Jingling. The worlds, while not all of them, have very dreary, gloomy designs. Everywhere you see, there is a shadow, or some NPC is looking glum. Witchy World, for example, is a rundown theme park. How anybody is willing to work there is beyond me. Which Mrs. Boggy has no problem bringing her kids here when the sign said the park was closed when we finally got it unlocked. But even with bad parenting aside, Banjo and Kazooie are the real murderous psychopaths in this entire story. They murdered a married ice couple just for a Jinjo and getting some pig's swimming hole clean and warmed up. Killed a welder who was nearsighted. Next they'll probably make crystal jiggies and suddenly appear in their underwear and a dead shaman in their bed. Is that what happened to Tootie? Yeah, it's also kinda odd that Tootie doesn't return in the sequel despite being a key component for the first game's story. Like, you rescue her, day at the beach, next game, she's on a milk carton, Cloud Cuckoo lands inside a trash can. Sibling disappearances aside, why not talk about the game itself? Now, Banjo Tooie carries the same movement from the first game, while also adding new abilities and items to toy around with. You still have the boots, flying, egg shooting, and Wonder Wings to boot, but you also have new types of eggs to shoot with, turning Kazooie into a drill on top boulders, first-person bird shooting, yep, that's a thing now, and clambering. Thank you very much. Another ability allows both Banjo and Kazooie to split up, and each of them utilizes their own set of skills, like Banjo using his backpack to safely skip across acid, sneaking into blistering waters, stuffing a fat kid, and hibernating. Kazooie still uses the same abilities that she had with Banjo, but is more capable of reaching higher ground without a backpack to hold her back, able to hatch out other eggs, and somewhat be a mother. And the glide. While it doesn't have any way to ascend to the skies like the flight pads, the glide doesn't use red feathers unlike the pads, and can make going around many areas feel like a breeze, if you will. However, in order to get these abilities, you need to acquire them first, and since Bottles is dead until the end, you will have to go to his brother, Drill Sergeant Jamjars, but the Army Mole isn't going to give you the abilities. Nope. This time, you have to pay him in music notes. Unlike the previous games where you are required to collect a certain amount of notes to go through the many sections of Grunty's lair, now they're used for buying abilities. However, they are still scattered around the worlds, but thankfully they've been changed to only give him 5 notes per nest, and even offers a cleft note worth 20 notes. In fact, most of the items are now bundled into these nests. Red and gold feathers are together, and the different egg types. Nevertheless, they also alternate in between, so if you wanted gold feathers, but somehow got red feathers, don't worry, there's another batch over there. Back to those egg types though. You got your standard blue eggs from the first game. Additionally, you also got fire eggs, grenade eggs, ice eggs, and eggs that will create an explosive mini kazooie that can also enter through small holes and surprisingly collect jiggies. There's also Mumbo Jumbo, who is playable for the first time, and joins Banjo in his adventure. He can jump pretty high, though he can't go underwater, nor does he have any special abilities. All you got is a magic stick and contextual spells. These range from giant Goliaths, EMPs, make it so you can breathe underwater, messing with the size of Humbawamba's wigwam, bringing dead alien children back to life, gosh, and make beanstalks grow. Taking over the transformation side of the shaman coin is newcomer Humbawamba, who claims she is the better shaman than Mumbo, even though Mumbo can use his spells to bring people back to life. Suddenly, turning into a washing machine isn't as exciting as bringing someone back from the grave. That's one of the many transformations. These also include the returning bee, who can now shoot, and a slew of new forms, such as the Stony for kickball tournaments, and also gain hits from other Stonies, a detonator that somehow can't breathe even though he's a box. Maybe it's the eyes. Fans that could pay for attractions for certain games and running over innocent Jinjos. I'm sure it's fine. Snowballs, T-Rexes, and even submarines. All these transformations and spells comes at a cost. You must collect Globos. That are not as common as Mumbo tokens a la Banjo-Kazooie. Instead, they're either near the shaman's locations or even inside their homes, which makes it easier, though I do have to ask, Mumbo, you do know there is a Globo below you, right? Can you just walk downstairs and pick it up? But just like in the first, these transformations and spells are only relegated to certain jiggies once again, but thankfully they've been given more depth, leading to earning those jigsaw pieces that now don't have eyes. Just like before, the main collectible is the jiggies, and they range from using transformations, using the usual moves to get across platforms big or small, and helping random townfolk. And this time, all the bosses are distinguishable as big threats, and not questionably identifiable like Conga. Additionally, these bosses are pretty fun to fight with. Not one fight felt off, and also feels rewarding, aside from the golden eggs that shoot infinite amount of eggs at Targazon's face. Oh, you poor Aztec god of some kind. I can only think of 3 bosses that came to mind where I feel like they weren't challenging or some sort of technical issue came about. The first is Old King Cole. Shoots eggs at his butt and dismember him limb by limb. This took almost no seconds to figure out, and it's cooled down. Another is Lord Wu Fak Fak from Jolly Roger's Lagoon, only due to the underwater controls and the frustrating egg aiming system underwater. Same issue goes towards the Mr. Patch fight in Witchy World, only you're in the air rather than the sea. That's also another skill to learn from Jamjars, by the way. In fact, it's the first move you get. The egg aiming helps in one regard, being able to precisely time your shots. The way to aim, though, is a bit tricky, considering you're using the left control stick to aim the egg. Now, this isn't bad per se, but it gets annoying when you add flying and underwater controls. Flying and aiming isn't so bad, but when you're in underwater, it is preventing your movement by a lot. Which is why I didn't like the Lord Wu Fak Fak fight because A, it was dark and I couldn't see him very well. B, I constantly have to switch from first person to normal view, only to go back to the first person and have to aim his boils, which have small hitboxes, and on top of that, you also require the use of grenade eggs in order to blow the pimples, and you only have 25 of them. And C, I think this is the most important part, I hate this boss, you ugly, blind, bellied up fish! Haha! I got you finally! Now let me out! Let me... Okay, I'm out. Thankfully, it was only that one fish to make my underwater paradise into a venom-soaked nightmare. At least you don't go inside a metal fish. I stand corrected. Layer bosses are more fun and challenging, and even some of them are funny as well. Like the dragons of Hellfire Peaks were waiting for their pizzas, and after you defeat them, they both have very tiny bodies for what appears to be a giant dragon. And of course, Grunty has fun with her quiz show, and her boss fight is also very clever, mixing in lasers and mortars while also continuing the quiz show. It just that it takes a while to get to that final point. This time around, you only got 90 jiggies, a little less than 100, but still a lot to collect. And some of them come from the returning Jinjos, but instead of 5 per world like the first game, you have 9 colored Jinjo families that must be found around the Isles of Hags, which are ranging from 1 white Jinjo, some family, 2 oranges, 3 yellows, 4 browns, 5 greens, 6 reds, 7 blues, 8 purples, and 9 black Jinjos. Entirely different from the first game now, isn't it? And some of these jiggies can be a chore for the most. Mostly the ones where you have to go to different worlds for later prizes. For example, the pigs in Jolly Roger's Lagoon, yeah, they can't swim in the pool because of the waste from Grunty's Industries. Also, one has 3 arms. To get the jiggy, you got to climb on top of the pipe just to get the water clean. That's all fine and good, but oh wait, you need to warm the water up because it's too cold for the kids to swim in. So 2 worlds later, we head to Hailfire Peaks, learn the sneak pack ability, press the button. Oh wait, but it's too hot, they say. So later on, they meet the Mildred Ice Cube, told us about her husband George and where he is. But first, give me the Jinjo, you cold-hearted witch! The aforementioned George is on top of a flight pad, and you have to push him off. Goodbye! Well, that helped quite a bit. Head back to Hellfire Peaks, open the door, and huzzah, you get a jiggy! Well, this is more extensive than Rusty Bucket Bay, I'll give it that much. There's also TERRYDACTYLAND, where you gotta help this Stegosaurus get his drinking hole filled back up. One jiggy is located behind a waterfall in Glitter Gulch Mines, which you can't get to until you learn about a special pair of spring shoes, and Grunty's Industries has 2 jiggies that are inaccessible until Banjo learns more backpack abilities. Took me a while to figure out how to get each of these jiggies in one way or another. It sounds like there's a lot of going back and forth, making the adventure feel longer than what it should have been, and truthfully, it's kinda nice. The worlds feel more open and double the size of Banjo-Kazooie's, meaning more freedom in the roaming around and any aforesaid back and forth. Also, certain parts of the worlds have shortcuts to get in between areas and locations. You can even use Chuffy after you beat Old King Cole, which accesses the cauldrons from the previous game. And then there's Canary Mary. You rescue her from the cage in Glitter Gulch Mines, and she wants to race. Okay, sounds fine. First challenge didn't need to build up a sweat. Very easy, just tap A and ding. Shiny puzzle piece, she says bye-bye for now. As soon as you get to Cloud Cuckooland, Canary Mary ramps up the difficulty for the next race. It's a weird pattern that you need to follow up on, because if you try doing this portion like the Mines race, she speeds up and you get your hands all cramped up for doing so. Also, she says, "You're too slow," and starts the race all over again. I attempted this 11 times before I eventually showed the old hag of a feather bag the race near the end and get the jiggy. Never have I encountered such an oddity quite like the Canary Mary rematch in Cloud Cuckooland. After the second race, my hand cramped up, and it was a burning, aching sensation before finally getting the last few jiggies on my adventure. And keep in mind, I'm playing with the Xbox One controller, which isn't as comfortable like the 360 controller or Nintendo 64 controller. But even with that race, Banjo Tooie is a fantastic adventure from left to right, and belongs well with other games that surpassed their predecessors. Banjo-Kazooie may have been great, but Tooie is monumentally phenomenal. The addition of bigger scope and scale of the worlds, the platform being refined and improved upon, the story is just as hilarious and charming, and overall the game has a sense of freedom and control, aside from underwater aiming controls. While 3 bosses may have caused me questions and outright fury coming out of me, who's up for fried fish, by the way, and a bird that turned my hand to dust, the egg aiming being kinda wonky and the minimal backtracking when it comes to certain jiggies, I still say Banjo Tooie, after playing it, might be my favorite game of all time. And hey, I enjoy the multiplayer as well. It's all just mini games from the single player, but when played with 4 friends, it's honestly a blast. Just be sure you stay friends afterwards. But I think there's something worth talking about in this video instead of waiting until nuts and bolts. See, going back to the history part, originally the N64 versions of Banjo 1 and 2 were supposed to implement a feature called the Stop and Swap. This originally was to include transferring the mystery eggs and the ice key from the first Banjo-Kazooie and being usable in Banjo Tooie to unlock new items for your save file, like giving Kazooie a dragon transformation in the sequel. However, the N64 was incapable of doing that at the time, so the feature was unfortunately scrapped, even though certain eggs from the first game were included and also the ice key. To this day, the stop and swap mystery remains a focal point in terms of discussion about Banjo-Kazooie. And then the Xbox Live arcade ports implementing the feature with Banjo-Kazooie having all the eggs being transferred to the arcade version of Banjo Tooie, which unlocks some gamer picks for the 360, Jinjo as a playable character in multiplayer, and the ability to use Kazooie as a bat. However, the stop and swap craze won't stop until Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. I mean, hey, I enjoyed Banjo Tooie, and certainly Nuts and Bolts might be a good game, right? I mean, Banjo Tooie has already proven that a sequel can be greater than its original counterpart, so who knows? Maybe they can strike out a third game that's possibly even better than the second game.
Well, that's it. One of the greatest games of all time, now on the books of the Anvil. So, what's up next for the Banjo-Kazooie line? Well, you're probably going to have to find out later for Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts once I get around to it. In the meantime, there's a certain playthrough that I need to get done. Excuse me for 1 minute.
Oh man, I did not take a drink of water when starting this recording. Fuck. Oh. Apparently my side was killing me as well. Then again, I'm sitting on my leg. So therefore, I am the peg leg. Arg.